The crystal chandelier quivered as the room erupted in chaos. Shards of porcelain clattered to the marble floor, mingling with gasps and whispers from the stunned crowd. Felicity stood in the center of it all, her wedding dress billowing like a tempest caught in mid-spin. Her bouquet lay abandoned at her feet, petals crushed under her trembling hands. "I can't believe this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet cutting through the heavy silence like a knife. "Is it true?" Across the ballroom, Caleb's face drained of color. His tailored tuxedo, immaculate moments ago, now felt like a noose tightening around his neck. His eyes darted to the waiter standing behind Felicity, a young man, pale and wide-eyed, gripping a silver tray as if it were a shield. "Don't listen to him," Caleb shouted, his voice cracking under the weight of desperation. "He's lying." But Felicity's eyes were no longer on Caleb. They were fixed on the waiter, searching for confirmation. The room seemed to hold its breath. The waiter swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice barely steady. "But I had to say something. I couldn't let you go through with this, not after what I saw." Now, before we dive into this thrilling story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to an incredible and teachable story for more captivating tales that keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment of drama, suspense, and inspiration. As you watch, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you discovered a dark secret about someone you're about to marry? Share your views in the comments below and connect with our amazing, incredible, and teachable story community. Now, sit back, relax, and prepare to immerse yourself in a story where love, betrayal, and courage collide. Let's get started. The morning sun poured through the sheer curtains of Felicity's bridal suite, casting golden rays across the room. The scent of fresh roses, her favorite flower, filled the air, blending with the subtle aroma of lavender candles flickering on the vanity. She stood before the floor-length mirror, her heart fluttering as her bridesmaids fussed around her, adjusting the delicate lace train of her gown and securing the final pin in her intricate updo. "You look stunning," her maid of honor Serafina said, her voice thick with emotion. "Caleb won't be able to take his eyes off you." Felicity smiled, her cheeks flushing a soft pink. The wedding dress had been a labor of love, custom made to reflect her style, elegant but not ostentatious. The silk fabric clung to her figure in all the right places, and the tiny pearls sewn into the bodice shimmered like stars. "Let's hope he doesn't faint," Felicity joked, trying to mask the faint unease that had crept into her chest. The estate buzzed with life below. Through the open windows, Felicity could hear the faint hum of chatter and laughter as guests arrived, the soft strains of a string quartet playing in the garden. It all felt surreal, like the culmination of a lifelong dream. But as perfect as it seemed, a shadow of doubt lingered at the edges of her mind. Caleb had been distant the past few days, his charming demeanor tinged with an edge of impatience. She'd brushed it off, chalking it up to the stress of the wedding, yet the feeling persisted. Shaking off the thought, Felicity turned to her bridesmaids. "Let's do this," she said, her voice firm, even as a faint uneasiness tickled the back of her mind. The kitchen was a flurry of activity as the waitstaff hurried to prepare for the grand reception. Silver platters gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and the rich aroma of roasted duck mingled with the sweet scent of chocolate ganache. Ethan, a young waiter new to the team, balanced a tray of champagne flutes while dodging bustling chefs. He hadn't expected to overhear anything unusual, certainly not on a day as joyous as this. But as he turned the corner near the pantry, he froze. Caleb's low, menacing voice carried through the partially open door. "It's done," Caleb hissed into his phone, the words sharp and clipped. "Make sure there's no trace of it. If she finds out, it's over. Everything." Ethan's brow furrowed as he leaned closer, careful not to make a sound. The usually charismatic groom sounded cold, almost ruthless. His voice was barely above a whisper, but each word sent a chill down Ethan's spine. A moment later, Caleb emerged, his expression hardened. Ethan shrank back, hiding behind a stack of crates. Caleb didn't notice him as he strode toward the service elevator, a manila envelope clutched tightly in his hand. "What was that about?" Ethan whispered to himself, his heart racing. Later, while clearing tables with Sophia, a fellow waiter, Ethan relayed what he'd overheard. Sophia's face paled as he spoke. I've heard rumors, she admitted hesitantly. There's a woman, Elise. She disappeared years ago. Some people say Caleb was the last one seen with her. Ethan stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. Do you think Felicity knows? She has no idea, Sophia replied grimly. And if she marries him, she might never find out. Ethan's stomach churned. He couldn't ignore what he'd heard. But what could he do? Ethan's hands trembled as he polished a crystal glass for the evening dinner. The weight of what he'd overheard gnawed at him, making every task feel surreal. As the waitstaff moved around him, setting tables with precision, his thoughts kept circling back to Felicity. She looked so radiant, so blissfully unaware of what her fiancé might be hiding. The sound of laughter pulled Ethan's gaze toward the grand dining hall. There, Felicity and Caleb rehearsed their first dance under the glittering chandelier. Guests clapped and cheered as Caleb spun her gracefully, his hands steady on her waist. But Ethan couldn't miss the tension in Caleb's jaw or the fleeting look of distraction that crossed his face when Felicity wasn't watching. He's nervous. That's all, Sophia whispered beside Ethan, her tone lacking conviction. It's a big day. Nervous about the wedding, or about his secrets coming out? Ethan muttered, his voice low. Sophia shot him a warning look. You can't get involved, Ethan. It's dangerous. As the rehearsal dinner began, Ethan's discomfort only grew. Caleb seemed to wear his charm like a mask, laughing and toasting with guests. But Ethan noticed how his eyes darted toward the entrance every few minutes, as if expecting someone or something. At one point, Caleb excused himself from the table and disappeared into the hallway. Ethan couldn't resist following him. Hidden behind a decorative column, he watched as Caleb handed the same manila envelope he'd seen earlier to a tall, imposing man in a dark suit. Their conversation was brief but intense, Caleb's body language rigid with urgency. When Caleb returned to the table, he kissed Felicity's hand with a broad smile, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that beneath the surface, something sinister was unraveling. The rehearsal dinner continued in full swing, with toasts and laughter filling the opulent dining hall. Felicity sat at the head of the table, glowing with happiness as her father raised a glass in her honor. Caleb, seated beside her, smiled warmly, his hand resting protectively over hers. Yet beneath the surface, Felicity couldn't shake a lingering unease. She excused herself during dessert, needing a moment to gather her thoughts. In the quiet of her dressing room, she caught sight of a photo album Caleb had given her earlier, a collection of their memories together. She flipped through the pages, her lips curving into a smile as she recalled their whirlwind romance, the extravagant dates, the laughter, the promises of a perfect future. But as she turned a page, her smile faltered. Nestled among the pictures was a photograph she didn't recognize. A strikingly beautiful woman with dark curls and a radiant smile posed beside Caleb on what appeared to be a yacht. Written on the back in neat script was a single name, Elise. Felicity's stomach churned. She hadn't heard Caleb mention anyone named Elise before. Curious, she tucked the photo into her purse and decided to ask him about it later. When she rejoined the dinner, she waited for the right moment. It came during a lull in conversation when Caleb leaned toward her, whispering something about the honeymoon. Caleb, she said softly, careful to keep her tone light. Who's Elise? His reaction was instant and jarring. The warmth drained from his face, replaced by a fleeting look of panic before he quickly composed himself. Just an old friend, he said, his tone dismissive. Why do you ask? Felicity forced a smile, but Caleb's reaction planted a seed of doubt that she couldn't ignore. Something about Elise felt important, too important to brush aside. The rehearsal dinner ended with a round of applause and warm farewells, but Felicity's mind was far from the celebration. The image of Elise and Caleb together gnawed at her. Her unease only deepened when Caleb left abruptly after the dinner, muttering something about last-minute arrangements. Felicity decided to clear her head by walking the dimly lit grounds of the estate. As she strolled past the catering tent, she overheard hushed voices. Curious, she stopped behind a row of hedges, peering through a gap. Ethan and Sophia stood close, their expressions tense. She has no idea who she's marrying, Sophia whispered, glancing nervously around. We can't just do nothing, Ethan insisted, his voice urgent. If what I heard is true, she's in danger. Felicity's heart raced. Were they talking about her? Quietly, she stepped closer, trying to catch more of the conversation. "Do you think she knows about Elise?" Ethan asked. Felicity froze. There was that name again. "Doubt it," Sophia replied, shaking her head. "But if Caleb's hiding what happened, it's not just dangerous, it's deadly." Felicity's pulse thundered in her ears. She waited until the waitstaff parted ways before stepping out from her hiding spot. Ethan nearly dropped his tray when he saw her. "Miss Felicity," he stammered, his face flushing. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the panic rising within her. "I heard you mention Elise. What do you know about her?" Ethan hesitated, his eyes darting to the empty path behind her. I don't think I should. You need to tell me." Felicity interrupted, her tone firm. "This is my wedding, my life. If you know something, I deserve to know it too." Ethan swallowed hard, realizing he couldn't stay silent. "It's about Caleb and Elise's disappearance." Ethan glanced around the dimly lit grounds, his anxiety palpable. "Miss Felicity, I don't want to get involved, but you deserve to know," he said in a hushed voice. Felicity's stomach churned. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, bracing herself for whatever he was about to say. "Tell me," she urged, her voice trembling but determined. Ethan hesitated, then began. "There's a rumor, one the staff talks about when Caleb's name comes up. Years ago, there was a woman named Elise. She worked with him on a business deal. From what I've overheard, she went missing after a major fallout with him." Felicity's heart sank. "Missing? What do you mean?" "She vanished," Ethan said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "No one knows what happened to her, but people say Caleb was the last person seen with her. There was an investigation, but it didn't go anywhere. Elise's family claimed she was planning to expose something about him, something illegal. And then she was just gone." Felicity stared at Ethan, the weight of his words pressing down on her chest. "Why would no one tell me this before?" "Because Caleb's powerful," Ethan said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "People are afraid of him. He's charming on the outside, but those close to him know better." Felicity's mind raced. Could this be true? Could the man she was about to marry be connected to something so sinister? "I need proof," she said, her voice steadier now. Ethan nodded. "Sophia and I found something earlier, a name in the catering schedule. Elise's brother, Marcus, is on the vendor list. If anyone knows what happened, it's him. But you need to be careful, Miss Felicity. If Caleb finds out you're digging into this, I don't know what he might do." Felicity's breath hitched. Elise's ghost wasn't just a rumor. It was a warning she couldn't ignore. Felicity couldn't sleep that night. Ethan's revelation about Elise echoed in her mind, each detail painting a darker picture of Caleb than she dared imagine. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the photo of Elise tucked under her pillow like a secret too heavy to keep. By morning, her decision was made. She needed answers. And if Marcus, Elise's brother, was at the estate, he might hold the key. She slipped out of her suite early, her wedding dress hanging silently in the corner, a reminder of what was at stake. Dressed in a simple sundress, she moved quickly through the hallways, avoiding eye contact with the bustling staff. Ethan had told her Marcus would be setting up near the outdoor bar, and as she approached, she spotted a man unpacking crates of glassware. "Marcus?" she called softly, her voice tentative. The man turned, his sharp features tightening when he saw her. His resemblance to Elise was striking. Same dark curls, same piercing eyes. He wiped his hands on his apron and stepped closer. "You must be the bride," he said, his tone guarded. Felicity nodded, glancing around to ensure no one was nearby. "I need to ask you about Elise. I found her photo, and I've heard things about Caleb." Marcus's face darkened, his jaw clenching. "If you know about Elise, then you know Caleb isn't the man you think he is." "Please," Felicity urged. "I need the truth. What happened to her?" Marcus hesitated, then spoke in a low, grave tone. "Elise was my sister. She was strong, fearless. She discovered Caleb was running illegal deals behind the scenes, embezzlement, fraud. When she threatened to expose him, she disappeared. I've been looking for answers ever since, but Caleb's influence is overwhelming." Felicity's blood ran cold. "Do you think he?" Marcus met her gaze, his expression haunted. "I don't think, I know." Felicity's heart hammered in her chest as she listened to Marcus's chilling words. "I know," he had said. The simple phrase felt like a weight pressing down on her lungs, and for the first time, the grand wedding she'd spent months planning seemed like a distant fantasy, a dream that was rapidly slipping through her fingers. I can't let this go, she whispered, her voice barely audible as the reality of what she was hearing settled in. Marcus studied her for a long moment, as if weighing the consequences of his next words. You're making a mistake, you know, he said, his voice low but firm. Caleb is dangerous. If you push him too hard, he'll destroy like he did to Elise. Felicity's mind raced. Everything she thought she knew about Caleb, the man she was about to marry, was crumbling before her eyes. She felt sick to her stomach, a tight knot of fear and disbelief twisting in her gut. Then what do I do? She asked, her voice shaking with desperation. I can't just marry him. Not now. Not with all this doubt hanging over us. Marcus took a deep breath, his face clouded with frustration. You can expose him. You can go to the authorities, but it won't be easy. He has connections everywhere. If you're going to do this, you need to be prepared for the fallout. Felicity felt the weight of his words. I don't care. I can't live with this secret any longer. I don't think you realize what you're up against, Marcus said, stepping closer. But I'll help you. I'll tell you everything I know, but you need to act fast. Caleb won't wait forever. Felicity nodded, her resolve hardening. I'm not waiting. I'm calling off the wedding. Marcus's eyes widened. You're sure? Yes, she said, her voice steady. I'm sure. Felicity's heart raced as she walked back to her suite, her decision made but her nerves fraying with each step. Calling off the wedding was only the first part of the battle. Now she had to confront Caleb. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone, her mind racing with thoughts of how she could break the news to him. She couldn't let him manipulate her anymore, but she knew how dangerous he could be. She found a quiet corner in the lavish hotel lobby, away from the crowds of guests. Felicity took a deep breath before dialing the number for her father. The ringing felt like an eternity, but finally, her father's familiar voice came through. Felicity, is everything okay? No, Dad, it's not okay. She swallowed hard, the weight of what she was about to say almost suffocating. I need your help. I'm calling off the wedding. I can't marry Caleb. Her father was silent for a long moment, and Felicity could almost hear the confusion and concern in his pause. What do you mean, sweetheart? What's going on? What's happened? There's something I need to tell you, something you won't believe. She took another deep breath, steadying herself. It's about Caleb. He's not who he seems. He's been hiding things I just found out. And I think he's connected to a woman who went missing years ago. Her name is Elise. Missing? Her father's voice rose in alarm. What do you mean? Are you sure about this? Felicity nodded, her throat tightening. Yes, I'm sure. And I can't just sit back and ignore it. I need to leave, and I need you to get me out of here. Her father's voice softened with urgency. Stay where you are, Felicity. I'll take care of everything. Don't make any moves until I get there. Felicity ended the call, her pulse still racing. She had done it. Now there was no going back. The morning of her wedding was the most surreal moment of Felicity's life. The hotel room, once filled with excitement and anticipation, now felt suffocating. The dress, hanging on a nearby rack, was a cruel reminder of the future she had almost chosen. As she paced back and forth, her mind raced with thoughts of Caleb and the confrontation she knew she couldn't avoid. Her father was on his way, but he wouldn't be there for hours. Felicity couldn't wait that long. She couldn't leave it all behind without looking Caleb in the eyes one last time and hearing him explain himself. With shaking hands, she dialed his number, her stomach a mess of knots. Caleb picked up on the second ring. Felicity? His voice was smooth, calm, just as it always was. Where are you? The guests are starting to wonder where you've gone. We need to get this show on the road, darling. I'm not coming, she said firmly, the words sharp in the silence that followed. I'm calling off the wedding, Caleb. There was a pause, and then Caleb's voice grew colder. What's this about? What's going on? You're making a mistake. I'm not making a mistake, Felicity said, her voice trembling but resolute. I know about Elise. I know what you did, and I know you've been lying to me. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. You don't know what you're talking about. Elise was nothing. She's gone, and that's it. Caleb's voice had shifted now, its usual charm replaced by a darker, more menacing tone. I'm not marrying you, Caleb, Felicity repeated, her voice unwavering. You can't manipulate me anymore. The silence that followed was thick, charged with an unspoken threat. You'll regret this, Felicity, Caleb said coldly before the line went dead. Felicity stared at the phone in her hand, her heart pounding in her chest. She had made the right choice, but at what cost? The silence in the room was deafening after Caleb's call ended. Felicity stood frozen, her phone still pressed to her ear as if expecting him to call back, to apologize, to convince her to come back. But the line was dead, and Caleb's chilling words echoed in her mind. You'll regret this. For the first time, Felicity felt the full weight of her decision. She had called off the wedding, but now what? She had no idea what Caleb might do next, and the dark truth about him was only beginning to unravel. Her thoughts flashed to Marcus and Elise. What had Caleb done to them? She couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a dangerous web she might not be able to escape from. Felicity took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She could hear footsteps in the hallway, muffled voices outside her door. The guests, her friends, and family were still expecting a wedding, and they had no idea what had just transpired. A knock at the door broke her train of thought. Felicity's pulse quickened, and she moved to answer, her heart racing. It was her father. "Dad," she breathed, a mixture of relief and anxiety flooding her. "You're here." He stepped inside, his face drawn with concern. "What's going on, Felicity? Why did you call everything off?" His eyes softened as he looked at her, but there was a hard edge to his voice. "Tell me you're okay." "I'm fine," she said, though the words felt hollow in her throat. "I couldn't marry him, Dad. He's not who he says he is. I found out what he's done, what he's hiding, and I couldn't stand by and let him manipulate me any longer." Her father's face hardened. "You did the right thing. But this isn't over. We need to be prepared for what comes next." Felicity nodded, her body tense with the realization that Caleb wouldn't let this go easily. But she wouldn't back down now. Felicity sat in the hotel room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, the weight of the past few hours settling on her shoulders. Her father had made a few calls and arranged for her to leave the estate, but Caleb's presence loomed over everything. The thought of facing him, of being in the same space as the man who had lied and manipulated her for so long, sent chills down her spine. She felt exposed, as if her whole world had been turned inside out. Outside the window, the sky was turning dark, casting an eerie glow over the estate. The guests were beginning to leave, some confused, others angry, none knowing the truth behind the chaos that had erupted. Felicity knew the story would spread quickly, and Caleb's reputation, carefully crafted over the years, would begin to crack. But the question was, would anyone believe her? Would anyone care? She stood, pacing the room as thoughts raced through her mind. She needed to take action to make sure Caleb could never hurt anyone again. But the fear of what he might do to protect his secrets still lingered in her chest. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen, an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. "Felicity." The voice on the other end was low and strained. "It's Marcus. Caleb's looking for you. He's furious. You need to leave now, while you still can." Her heart skipped a beat. "What? What's he planning?" "I don't know, but he's not going to let you walk away this easily. He'll stop at nothing to make sure you don't expose him. Please, Felicity, go. It's the only way you'll be safe." Felicity's breath hitched. She had known this would come, but the urgency in Marcus's voice made it all too real. Caleb wouldn't stop until he had control again, and Felicity had to move, now. Thank you so much for watching this incredible and suspenseful story unfold. Felicity's courage to stand up for herself and uncover the truth is a powerful reminder of the strength we all have within us. Now, we'd love to hear from you. What would you have done if you were in Felicity's shoes? Do you think Caleb will try to redeem himself, or is this the end of the road for him? Share your thoughts, theories, and personal experiences in the comments below. We read every single one and love hearing your perspectives. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Incredible and Teachable Stories for more thrilling tales that will keep you captivated and inspired. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you're always the first to know when we drop a new video. And before you go, here's a little teaser. Our next story dives into the life of someone who risked everything for a forbidden love. Intrigue, danger, and unexpected twists await. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned. Thank you again for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay inspired, stay curious, and remember, every story has a lesson. See you in the next video.